Hello, welcome to this podcast to nowhere. Sort of, actually, maybe it might be a homeworking session as well. A bit of a combo unit here. um, to speak on enemies, I guess. Just separation, segregation, forced division in this really sort of offensive, defensive, yours, mine, this team, that team kind of filter that gets placed upon everything. I think it has to do with duality and sort of the part of the game we're in. You know, the architecture of this world that is Earth is a part of, and that holds, and that we are moving through, humanity, you know, living within, and evolving through. And so I see, you know, the truth in them. I see the blatant, obvious display, you know, of teams, of wars, of boundaries, and borderlines, and nations, and all of these kinds of segregative actions and labels that we define our world with, and ourselves with, and others with. Not trying to ignore them or undo them even, but just, I feel, a necessary itch I have to scratch around it. I guess, I don't, you know, that's plaguing my mind. I'm hoping by speaking out about it, I might remedy myself a little. Also hear, maybe answer my own questions, hear my own truths as I speak. A lot of times that's why I make these kinds of audios, these podcasts. And especially what has turned into sort of the homeworking sessions I do here and there behind the scenes, in between days, between doing my Bible studies and, of course, living my own life, you know, my own spiritual path and journey, brings me to new experiences and new observations that I like to share. So it helps me to see more clearly that which I think I see already by doing these. So thanks if you're listening, to anyone who is listening. Really appreciate your audience. Today's Monday, August 18th, for my own reference and for my own timestamps of organic recognition of aliveness today, putting my imprint on my day. Oh, did I mention, yeah, my name is Allie with Marie Speaks. If you are new, thank you for listening to this. If it's your first time listening to me, sometimes I make a bit more organized content. Sometimes I make things that are a bit less organized and without a topic. But today I'm sort of in between, with a couple things bubbling and brewing that I'd like to speak about. But mainly, like I've mentioned, this other, the enemies, those who don't think like us, you know, who is us and who is them? What a wonderful lyrics that come up in that song, Us and Them, by Pink Floyd, if anybody's interested in or knows that one. Always been I love music. I'm an eclectic music listener to many different varieties. Always loving lyrics has been one of my things my whole life. And hence, you know, I'm a bit of a writer myself, and sometimes write poetry, not music. I don't think I'm very musically inclined, but anyways, that doesn't have too much relevance here. uh, except to say that it's worth listening to, no matter what kind of music you like. If you don't like it, you could just read the words in it, and it's worth it too. But this seems rather played out to me, and I know a lot of people are feeling this way too. I don't want to sound inconsiderate or disconnected too much either from the reality of detrimental ways that these things play out, and the truth of them, and the fact that they are very real. I'm not trying to negotiate around that, or it's not an elephant in the room to me. I understand greatly how these things manifest in a sort of undeniable way. But just because the symptoms have happened doesn't mean there's not a remedy, doesn't mean that the issue can't be healed, and the fact that I think more and more of us are seeing that, are actually able to get out of the pigeonholed this side or that side, to realize that there's a coin we're fighting about here. There's a wholeness actually that we could step out of, and remember that that's not always the answers. It's not always the best response to attack back. This is another reason I really appreciate Eastern cultures and a lot of those ancient kind of writings and teachings about non-action, because and the passive approach, because there is so much available in that. It's like a salve that can be very healing when actually allowed to be applied. But people are so scared and reactive around the wound that they slap the hand away before it can even put the salve on it, or there's just so many ways these things play out that it makes that salve look unappealing, and it can't get a chance to actually be applied and left alone, and to see the healing that could actually come from it. Again, there's so many different peoples here, so many different types of thinkers, types of doers. It's such a paradoxical thing, because at the end of the day, we are not so different either, because what most people want is pretty basic, it's a pursuit of happiness, is peace, is a roof over the head, with the consistency and security. It's a chance to prosper, to thrive, and not just survive. But so many people will settle just for survival, even if it could be a peaceful survival. And what does that really tell us? The fact that so many of those thinking minds out there, peoples in different scenarios, even myself, will settle for peace at our own expense, something that felt detrimental to us, a choice that was a compromise that we almost feel losing, but if we could just have peace of mind through it, sometimes that can look like giving up on a dream when people are relentlessly around you telling you you're never going to do it. Or if you have a voice inside your head that, that is that you're never going to make it critique, that it just absolutely ends up self-sabotaging you. I'm reading A Course in Miracles currently. I mentioned that before, so that's been playing a lot into my life. I'm doing the 365 lessons in the 50s. I'm in the review right now, in review 1. But I'm also reading the student book. I think I'm in chapter 11 or 12 now. Getting so many connections, so many connectivities, and more details to add to my own world and inner thoughts, practice points, and good working for positive systems. You know, how strong positive service, freely offered energies, and love are truly powerful and abundant and really always there. And they really do consistently cause an invigoration and empowerment available. You know, I've witnessed it. I feel it. Not to say that I'm not in my own working processes of coming back to that all the time. You know, that of course is my work. But the recognitions are more clear. The time spent in clarity is gaining, is appreciating more, you know, in value. I feel my whole life is appreciating more in value. And I'm finding it more conducive to my mental space to allow unconditional love and extend it out to all, and to really blur the boundary lines of what is stranger versus brother, to draw language from A Course in Miracles. But also in the New Testament, where I'm reading, and my own personal readings I'm reading in Mark, but I'm reading also through Matthew up into chapter 20 in my recorded sessions. And Jesus is one that is so known for this: love thy neighbor, to love your brother, to honor your mother and father, to honor those as you would honor yourself, even, and to extend out to the stranger that open hand that you would to a brother. And one of my favorite, all-time favorite, hardest lessons from Matthew, and Jesus, of course, is where he is speaking sort of to the Pharisees, I guess, and to others who are there, and saying to him, sort of pointing out their hypocrisy in it, and by saying, it's easy to like those who like what you like. It's easy to love those who love you already. It's easy to get along with those who want to get along with you, what you choose to get along with. Your laws, see things in your way, who are yes men. It's easy to be loved by them and to love them. And to practice extending out courtesies. I'm stuck on the word curiosity for some reason. Courtesies, and practice good behavior, loving and caring your neighbor when you like your neighbor, when it's your cousin there, when it's your uncle next door, you know, when it's someone you look up to even. But what about when it's someone you disagree with? What about all these other people, you know? Because even the publicans, even the heathens, even uneducated people, you know, get along with those who like them, who pay them, who value money. You know, I think that's one thing that he put out there that was a real blatant kind of in your face about the money changers, about the way that things were all paid for subscriptions and pyramid scheming. You know, the things that we see today, all the money changers, every little fee, which every hand gets, the thing gets changed over, a little fee is collected, and that it's all trickled down into the stranger, the outside man, because no child is made to pay the fee, right? Whatever they call it, make the sacrifice, bring in, I forget the exact word that they use in the Bible for it, but there's another thing where I just recently read, and Jesus had asked to them, you know, do the children of the king have to come and pay the toll or whatever, bring a sacrifice and such? And they're like, no. Strangers do. Those people coming from outside the land do, of course, but it's counterintuitive, actually, to remembering that we're a holistic whole, and that we're all sons of God, that we're all in a brotherhood, that humanity in itself is, its condition is a one whole being, is a species. I think this can really help honor each one of us individually as well, because we remember we have purposeful impact to the whole. We're less likely to demean others. We're less likely to come from a place of fear and attack another out of an instability or insecurity. If we know we have purpose, if we know our needs are going to be met, if we know that there's contributions to be made to the whole, but also retribution to be given back, and those are the truths. The give and take is the truth. There's a whole different space of operation of presumptions and expectations that come with a positive orientation, that they're not allowed or available within a negative mindset, within debt slavery, within the negative agendas, systems, this negative system. And I think slave master cycle and enemies and all of that are part of that negative delineation and deviation away from the one truth, which is we are all whole, we are all one. And how could you attack a brother? How could you attack yourself? Why would you choose to do that? Out of all things that could be done with a hammer, why would I choose to smash my own hand? I wouldn't. Hands can get smashed, yeah, maybe if you're not fully paying attention and you're creating something, you hammer your finger on accident. But again, that's because we have an incorrectness of perception happening, because we're not paying attention to the present moment. Our mind is off in another place. And that's an incorrect operation and functionality happening within the system that should be corrected. Because when we're doing a skill, we're the master of creation. When we're doing carpentry, we should be fully embodying, loving nailing every time, hitting that nail on the head. We should feel with the reverberation of metal on metal and be alive in it and breathing with it and experiencing it, then those things wouldn't be even happening if we were called to, be a carpenter. It's because of some kind of distraction, right? That brings us, but we're full, this is what the world is. This is what creation of separation has made for us, this echo chamber of reverberations and bounce back boomerangs, bangaroos, I was going to say, like, what the heck is that? Total, like, Australian jumble of a million different things jammed into one word. Boomerangs and kangaroos are just as expressive, different kinds of beings, right? Very volatile expressions of what can happen in reactive states, I guess, is why I was kind of thinking about the boxer in the fight or flight kind of animalistic instinct of that kangaroo and the power of it, right? And also the boomerang. Which is that, it has this turnaround effect. It comes back to us. It circles back around. And it can be a beautiful arcing. Or if we've lost attention, it can come back and smack us in the back of the head. Be not so nice. Right? But again, do we hate the boomerang? Do we make all boomerangs enemies now and ban boomerangs? Are kangaroos outlawed? Do we just hunt every single one of them down? I mean, I think in the past we can find templistic historical experiences where we have done similar things like that. And in fact, what we should be doing, accumulating those holistically and knowing that we wouldn't do those things again, but there's something tricky, afoot here. There's a mystery to this game. There's other, there's shadow, there's form, there's illusion, there's truth, there's duality. We have so many different cycles and organic measurements, clocks, and templates to witness and observe and learn from, even here. Both larger and smaller than us. And also so many varieties of life. It's, the choice of angry division to fight just is, to me, foolery. It's absolute nonsense. And I mean foolish in a derogatory sense, not in a full spectrum kind of way that I like to look at, say, the fool in the tarot sense, in an esoteric sense, and in an archetypical sense. But just in the world sense of having a nice term to display in improper, inverted use of intelligence, I guess. And lots of people will say, oh, it's a thing within us, it's something within humans. And there's, arguments to be had all along at different times for that kind of thing. I have my own sort of theories, I don't even know, concept of learning and growth through time that I prefer to lean into, and to find longevity and markers sort of in the marathon of my life to showcase myself long-term purpose. And to also understand how one lifetime is short and fleeting and seemingly gone in the blink of an eye, seemingly like just dust in the wind, and yet it's, at the other time, it's so long, it's just yours, it's so valid, it's monumental to you, There's so many paradoxes, and of course if we live in a world of quote-unquote duality, we see opposites and polarities. What do we? Of course we have friends and enemies, we have likes and dislikes, it's inevitable. But I also think, sort of, inevitability comes with the also truth that things get very old. New things do change. It's not always the same. It's a trick to it. That's why there's a flip. That's the polar flip. That's the electric 0 point, the exchange and the switch from positive to negative. It's a mystery in itself. And so I do think that, mysteriously enough, we will be, and we are already, making our way away from the need for strict duality of friends and enemies, and moving more into a heart-based holistic view that will allow us to bring into this sort of triality of understanding, and also a great observer role. The third party space gets recognized again. to remembering where all this has been happening in a place. Maybe there's been good guy, bad guy. Maybe there's been bully, victim. Maybe there's been a tyrant and a enslaved, happening. Yeah, we know. But also there's third-party space here. There's other happenings. There's a container for the whole. There's in-between portions. It's, not a stagnant state. It's not a picture image that's set. It's not 1.5 straight down the middle. Cut, equal half. It's not black-white. It's yin-yang. There's a gray gradient. There's an ever-changing cyclic flow, a give and take between night and day. Right? Dawn doesn't just jump up over the horizon. The sun doesn't just set and it's dark all of a sudden for 12 hours, and then it hops up and it's light for 12 hours. Things have a flow, a give and take, and there's the third-party space. So I think we're stepping and remembering and reminding ourselves all the time, trying to remember it, and I think we'll get there. And I think positive service is going to really blossom out of that third-party space, out of the triality, remembering the triad of creation too. This comes with remembering great purpose and honoring it, knowing that each human is a sovereign bit of a fractal whole, God's source creation, on equal footing as all others. And the acceptance of that, the repercussions need to play out here, because most across the world do seem to want to accept that great peace and the pursuit of happiness for each and have freedom for all. There's just a couple of clinging on barnacles, so to speak, sort of promoting and holding stiff the images, the roles, and the trauma, the drama, and the heights of it all, They don't want forgiveness. They don't want to heal. They want the replay. They want the next hit of those really amplified emotions. They want revenge. They want gratification that is self-serving and props them up above others, and in a highlighted segregatory sense. And when we step back yet out again of that again and say, well, that's not conducive to the whole. To want that is actually at the expense of the whole. It just doesn't make sense. But we do, and then it comes down to again what those like me who I just have to continue to extend out positive service, who just have to be the waves that lap against the rock with the barnacle on it. It doesn't hurt us. It doesn't hurt the ocean to do that, to have the waves crushing against it, to slap against it, to come again, to always be there, to pull in and out, to offer and to revoke, to consent and pull back. Right? Because in fact the tides, the water movements, the organic flow that's sucking and pulling waves around doesn't have anything to do with the simple rock and the little barnacle on it. They flow in a much deeper organic measurement. They follow a different clock and rhythm and current, right? Higher, aligned, abundant, ever eternal, and linked into that deeper purpose. And so, yes, it's comes with its own different exercises, its own feelings and tasks to work with ever-flowing, freely offered service, to bring in and allow retribution from all angles, to take in critiques, input, and comments from all different angles, from all different people, and look for the truth in them, to not be turning a blind eye, or to not wanting to hear certain things, or to clinging on to certain words, to try to find a word to come back at, to try to find an angle to attack from, to try to be right or prove wrong, or to try to be seen as smarter than, or to try to make them feel any kind of way, but instead to just take in the input and let it filter through and allow your inner filters to actually hear what's for them, and then to speak out freely, honoring your own light and love within you, knowing that when you choose to speak out, you're speaking to yourself as well as to that other, and that the things that you choose to speak on to that other are the most reflective qualities of what you've heard them say. Not even what they've heard themselves say, or what they are their most reflective qualities to them that they're hoping you reply on, or that they're hearing you reply even. There's such a different translation mechanisms at work, clarifying or muddying up the exchanges when we speak with others, when we share with others, when we hear and listen. And whether it's actually we're speaking directly, we're listening to content, we're making content like I am right now, all of them, the same structuring, all matter and are all purposeful on so many angles, and are again all for me, for you, for the one in the observer's role. And I think when we remember that, it helps us remember that third-party space out there, this otherness that is the separation from I, myself, and from this external world I am placed in. There's a middle ground. There's a spirit connectivity. There's this other, deeper container available. And I think when we remember that, we remember we all sit within that. How can you want to reach out and harm another? How detrimental to the whole. Imagine if your heart cells could do that. And in fact, I think, we could get into this in a later time and do not have time to talk about this, but when we run detrimental inner systems within our body vessels, the commands actually do hurt each other. And they are running detrimental systems within the organ systems in there. And they are stealing nutrients from each other and working at each other's expense. Your heart is trying to steal as much oxygen and nutrients as it can possibly have and hoard it in there because it thinks it won't go on. It doesn't care if the lungs have enough. It doesn't care if your toes have enough because it's been told, I am the most important. Just like your lungs might tell it themselves they're the most important. And so the breath gets stored in there. This is, a belief of mine about energetic hoarding and accumulation in improper ways in negative systems that causes junk and toxicity to store in things we call tumors, in closets and back spaces where we forgot to take trash out for a long time. But if we go in and honor systems and we correct those functions in there, and all of our workers and managers who run the organ systems, they know that they're actually working for a whole body here, my body, Allie's body. And they're all benefit each other. And actually, if the heart does great work, and the heart runs freely and breathes freely and gives as freely as it receives, I have a better overall function. It actually pumps and takes in and lets go better. It's, and the lungs work better. And it can actually help the lungs just by doing its own good work. It can't do the lungs' work ever for it, but it can increase productivity by doing its best job, just like any other system can help out other organ systems by doing its job its best way. It's the same way you help your community. You don't have to go out and pick up, all of the trash in the whole community. You can if you want to, if that's how you feel is your service, go for it. Because there's even in the body, cells who go out and do that kind of thing, Go where you feel called to do. But if that's not your calling, if you have other things, passions or services to be provided, keep your house clean. Keep your yard clean. Keep your street sidewalk clean. You know, your strip of area, make sure it's, and don't litter yourself. Don't be out in other spaces adding to trash. You don't need to be telling people and wearing shirts, don't litter, and putting up signs or yelling at people who are, you know, but just do you, just do it the right way. And that's the significant impact that just helps. Because if you start running around chasing other people, you're taking away from the time that is already you're supposed to be your service, you know. You have a different service that you're called for. Anyways, I've talked for much too long. I'm hoping that this, even though it's a little over half an hour, it might condense down and not be too long as to come into an actual video version of my podcast here, so it's not just a plain black background. But we'll see what happens. Either way, if you've listened to me talk for this long, I really do thank you and appreciate your audience. Thank you for your wonderful contributions to our collective. We would not be the same without you. Thanks for witnessing mine. And I hope I see you next time. Bye for now.